So what I want us to do is to start becoming more conscious, start choosing things in a better way for ourselves, and start creating a life that's going to gear us to really take advantage of the opportunities that are going to show up for us in the years to come.
This podcast is brought to you by The Integrated Human. We work up, down, inside out to plug yourself into your potential. If you want to see what we are up to and what's next, sign up to our newsletter or follow us on social media. If you like what we are doing, we really appreciate it if you can like our post on social media and YouTube and help us grow.
All right. Welcome to the Big and Small Podcast. I'm Jason Shields and I'm big.
And I'm Marit Gabrielsen and I'm the tiny one.
Good morning and welcome. This is morning for us and I'm back in the hot seat with my bestie, Marit Gabrielsen. So, shall we talk about grief?
Well, this is what's up lately, so I guess that's as good as anywhere to start.
We lost one of our battle yogis, one of our jiu-jitsu athletes, and looking at grief, feeling grief, and working with grief. So have you had experience with this kind of grief before?
Lost people, you mean? Or...
Yeah.
Yeah, I think most people have.
Yeah, that's the thing I was surprised with, that most people in the jiu-jitsu community in Vos haven't. There's a very few select people, generally those over 35, that have ever lost somebody who's significant. You know, you've had an exciting life, Marit, but many of the young men there have never lost anybody who's close to them. They haven't even lost their grandparents. They haven't lost their parents. They haven't lost a close friend. And it's very interesting to see the range, seeing somebody who's able to, move and act and be proactive in a situation like that, like yourself, and see people who are completely parked by the idea of not being able to see somebody they see every day or every other day. So learning how to work with that grief is actually a skill, and unfortunately becomes easier and easier as you do lots of it.
Well, that's the thing with all skills.
That's right. And that's the number one lesson from this. It's learnable, and you need to learn it, how to work with your own grief, because if you live long enough, you will lose people. And part of being a total person is not just trying to live the high life and ride the top of the waves, but it's to understand that sometimes the wave's going to crash over you. And you're going to have to recover from that. And as we say, it's not about trying to be happy all the time. It's accepting the fact that you are a full-range human being. And it's normal, and it's actually correct for you to have the full range of experiences. So, in this situation, I saw you take charge in the moment of shock. I saw you move towards gathering the group. I saw you be a leader and organize people's thoughts. I saw you speak well. I saw you hold the group. What a amazing.
Well, that's the thing. Life still continues.
Mm-hmm.
So it has to continue.
Yeah. But sometimes people get parked and life goes by them, but you actually were working with it.
Well, I can't say. I always, like, when my grandma died, that's when I started jiu-jitsu. So I don't know if so I understand that parking spot, but that has to do with how well you've, I won't say mastered yourself, but how much you worked with emotions and the different qualities of them. Like, I was thinking the other day that we said in November we had a podcast, and I was reading this article then about how people were angry at November because November is a shitty month, and the author of that article, he said, no, it's not that November is shitty, it's just that we treat it as it's June. Because November has different qualities than June. The same thing now when I actually want to sit in and watch movies, I think, no, it's June and it's actually sunny and light night, so, get out, get moving, because it's the time for sitting inside watching TV will come. It's called November. So it has different qualities in different seasons, the same thing as emotions has different qualities. When my grandma died, I didn't think that I had emotions, or I didn't think about emotions, or you would just what you were more. Like there weren't any conscious thoughts around it. I don't think I know I didn't have any conscious thoughts. I just were what I was in a way. So if you were depressed, you were depression.
That's it. That's the differentiation. You were depression.
And I was depressed. Looking back, I didn't know, because I didn't know it was depression, because I didn't know that wasn't, you read about depression, but it's a thought, not something you feel, although you are it. So, and I think actually most people understand that, because most of us are it and not separating it. And what got me out of that, because depression energy is really still and not moving, was jiu-jitsu. When I started that got me out of it, because it's so moving as sport. I started moving, therefore also the energy started to move. Now it was totally different, because, well, first of all, we had a conversation around death when my second grandma died, long into jiu-jitsu, and I started looking that after our conversation about death as a transition, and that it's not the person dying is dead. They are no more. What the grief is about what could have been, what you should have said. So the grief is mine.
What you have lost.
Yeah, it's something that I own, which makes it actually easier to deal with, because I can't deal with the fact that you're dead. So, well, I can't kind of say, hey, Joey, come and fix this, because, well, you're not here anymore. But it's my thoughts, it's my emotions, it's my missing. It's all of that is mine, and means that I also can own it in a different way. And just to, like I said, I see now death as a transition. It has to be, because you're not your body, you're not your thoughts, you're not your emotions, you're not anything of this. So it's a transition to something. What? I don't know. Do I care? Not that much. Not right now. Maybe when I'm 70. But it's a transition, and the grief is mine. Also now knowing about depression, because we work so much with emotions and anger and sadness and grief and all of the inward going emotions, you get better at seeing them, understanding them, not becoming them when you don't have to. And for us, it's a shock, because our friend, it was an accident that happened. It's one of those shit happens. Shouldn't happen, but it does. And I know that we also have a responsibility as a community to take care of our people. So that comes first. And then set off time to deal with your own grief or your own emotions. So I think the first 3 days I did my work and I did everything that was needed. And then I went home and I ate so much. I took a bag of, not like a 200 gram plate of chocolate. I just ate it And I eat one piece of chocolate normally because I'm not that fond of chocolate. But I took a whole 200 grams and I was looking at it and I'm like, yeah, I'm just going to eat you. And that's okay. That's what you want right now. So, you kind of accept that it is, and you watch low energy movies and you just kind of let that work itself out. But the next day you still go to work and you kind of don't get, is it consumed?
Yeah, or just stuck.
Yeah, but it doesn't take you over.
Yeah.
You allow it as like it's. I'm done
you allow it to be, but you don't become it.
Yeah. We were done at 5, and I'm going to bed at 9. So I have 4 hours, 5, 6, 5 hours to just work with it. And it's low energy emotions. Well, just let that do its thing and work itself out.
Yeah.
Instead of kind of balling it up, because the issue when you first, if you don't identify it, and if you just let it, which I have experience with, when you're not working with the emotion, not acknowledging them, not seeing them, not figuring out what they are, they do not disappear because it's still energy, and energy needs to go somewhere. So it's going to take revenge somehow. If that is being sickness or latching out on other people or in behaviors, it can be everything of that. I have had a lot of experience with it, latching out on people and on in my own health, and I can't allow that anymore. So therefore, I rather work with the energy. And what I'm left with afterwards is a lot of I'm feeling bad because I'm quite happy because I hear his voice in my head all the time. I looked at who he was and what he brought to our community, and I take it upon myself as a tribute to him that I don't want to become him. And I think that's also important when someone dies. It's really easy to glorify who they were. And if you glorify them, well, no one's perfect, and we have qualities that's not that attractive, but to find the qualities that were very attractive, like this guy was extremely including and always enjoyed every part of his life, and to take parts of that, if it's that or something else, but feel into it and feel, what did that person bring that I can now take with me to remember him, but also to build myself and the community around. And I can do that because, well, I've worked with what I've had of the sad stuff, and what I'm left with is just all the funny comments and the high fives and the laughter, and I'm not left with sorrow. I miss him, but I can't do anything with that. It's not coming back. So missing him, but missing him and then feeling him and the joy he brought, not missing him and being, oh, he's never going to be here. Well, then I can't move because he will not come back to the mat. It was a long.
It was beautiful.
Thingy.
It was beautiful. And extremely instructive because part of working this efficiently and that powerfully with emotion comes from the work that you've done with emotion before. First experiences that
I
you
got
had.
some help from you.
A little bit. Yeah, but the process of meditation that you've been working with allows you to really actually understand and see and experience that you are not your emotion, and you are able to think and work with the emotions instead of them being you. You know, like we talked about before, that emotions are very personal in that, you know, you have a thought, but you are angry, you are sad, you are grief. And as soon as you can actually find your center in this tide of energy and emotion, emotion is only energy in motion. And if you ever felt somebody be angry or very, very, very sad, you feel like you're sucked into them or pushed away from them or whatever. You can really feel the energy moving with the emotion. If you're sensitive at all, then you realize that once you've found your center, it's something that you have to work with. And that's why once you've found that, then you really become powerful, because you then can stand strong in your emotions, regardless of how explosive or how deep or how big they are. It's kind of like being in a lighthouse when there's a storm outside, and you've achieved that. It's so beautiful. And to see you in situations now, it's kind of like looking at the white belt, freezing when somebody grabbed your hand in a fight, and then suddenly seeing you just run over people in world championship at an elite level. It's insane, and never stop. It's watching that evolution so inspiring, and seeing the work that you've put in so inspiring, and then seeing how your example inspires other people, watching you be strong for the group, watching you show up for the group. And that's one of those big things everybody wants. The last podcast you talked about, you wanted power. Well, power means being able to stand strong when other people aren't strong.
But that was one of the points I said.
Yeah.
I thought, well, if I want it, I need to act on it. If not, shut the fuck up.
You need to be it.
If not,
that's it.
Don't say it. You have to. I don't want to trick myself or other people around me. And if you want that, you need to
show up.
Show up and do that. If you want to, like we often say, if you want to become a world champion, well, act and behave like a world champion.
Yeah, you have to do that thing before you become it in a way. You have to have all that habits and.
It's not a golden bar. If you want to be rich, a golden bar would not just drop into your hands. No. You can manifest a lot, but I don't think that's possible.
It's going to be a process for you getting that.
It's going to be a process, and it has to be do with choices. So when opportunity arises, do you take it or not?
Yeah.
But then it comes back a little bit to if you're aware of what you want.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
If not, you can think that you want something and then you self-sabotage.
Yeah.
Like we had a client we worked on the other day, and me and you, and I told him that after you work a while, like if you have math class, also after a while, 2 and 2 is 4. Mm-hmm. So when you say what is 2 and 2, they say 4, mm-hmm. but they don't understand that it's 4.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And when you gotten to the point where you know what the right answer is, it's time to start understanding that answer.
Yeah. They can say the words, but they don't really be that thing. They just saying, they're repeating what they recognize instead of what they are.
And what they actually believe.
Yeah.
And I said, well, it's very important. You know the right answer, and that's good. And we need you to know the right answer. But I need to know what you actually feel, think, and believe.
Yeah.
Because if I have a white water bottle here, if you're on Spotify or Apple and not on YouTube, but if I say this bottle here is white, mm-hmm. and you say, yeah, it's white, but you think it's actually black because something's wrong with your eyesight. So you think it's the blackness of the microphone. That's mm-hmm. the bottle. Mm-hmm. And if you say, yeah, it's white, but you think it's black, mm-hmm. then we're going to hit our coaching different, and we're going to hit, it could be...
You may get your eyes checked. You may have a tumor.
That's the whole thing.
Yeah.
We may not recognize that you have a tumor because you say the right thing instead of what you actually believe. Said, I know it's white, but I see black.
Yes. And that's more than telling the truth. Yes, we tell the truth. Yes, but you should speak from your truth, because that's how you fix yourself.
Yeah.
And it's not like, okay, I don't think that lady's dress is pretty, I'm going to walk over and say that she has an ugly dress. Shut up. We're talking about speaking from what you actually in your body are, feel, believe. And when it's appropriate for you to interact with your environment. So the point is that when your friend says that's a white bottle and you see it's black, probably you guys need to check yourselves to make sure that you're okay. One of, that you are agreeing or that you haven't misunderstood instead of just agreeing to agree.
Yeah, and I think especially if you're working on coaching and you're working on developing yourself, like we talk about unconditional love and gratefulness and to be like, for a long while I understood that you wanted gratefulness, but I didn't feel it.
That it would be good to express or have gratefulness,
Yes.
right? Yeah.
But I was thinking the feeling,
Yeah.
not having the feeling.
Yeah.
And to be honest with yourself, because we talked a lot about in the last podcast about acceptance, and to be honest about what you are, because it's so important that I think it's very important that you learn the right answers, like
Yeah.
2 and 2 is 4.
Yeah. You get a map.
But if I say 2 and 2 and you feel that it's 14 on the map, well, please say 14, because we need to know where you are on the map, and you will like yourself to know where you are on the map. Because if not, you keep tricking yourself. And in this process of grief, because it can take a day, but it can take 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
And not because everybody else move on, but say that it's hard for you, well, then accept that it is. And understand in your head that, well, it's been 2 years, maybe I should have moved on. But if you haven't, you shouldn't act like you have.
That's it.
Then you need to acknowledge, I should have, but I have not.
Yeah.
I think that bottle is black.
Yeah.
I need to get that checked out.
Yeah.
If not, you kind of get very stuck. And it's very, I think maybe this is more men, that I don't know, but you kind of, everybody moves on, so I also moving on. But then you're just a sweetheart and you haven't learned emotions yet, which is a job in itself, and it takes longer, and that's okay. It's not a competition in recovering from a loss like that. And like you said, a lot of people in our club haven't experienced loss before, and if it's your first time, well, it's going to take some time.
Yeah, because the first step in losing somebody in general is shock. I was walking with 2 of our fine gentlemen and talking this out, basically. And we met another one of our jiu-jitsu athletes. Beautiful, strong, emotional man, grown up. And I said, how are you doing? How are you? And he said, oh, I'm fine. Yeah, I've dealt with this kind of stuff before. I'm pretty good. I'm not really feeling that much right now. And the first thing I did was give that guy a big hug, because it's shock and he's in denial. The first step often in, especially male, and I'm not talking about men, I'm talking about the male soul, the animus, which Carl Jung would call it, is to, in a way, freeze in shock, freeze the emotion so that you can try to see and look for danger in the jungle. That's the job. And of course, this same athlete was one of the guys who had the biggest crocodile tears when we were having the memorial. So he was feeling something, and he actually addressed that. He was like, but it's first there's a shock and a denial. Often. And some people go very quickly through that. Some people never get through it because they're just not able to address their own feelings, which is then an issue later on, because it, like Mara was saying, it always comes out, it lashes back out in some way. It'll come out sneaky in illness or in weird behaviors or in ritualistic avoidance and all kinds of unconscious behaviors. Alcoholism. People often drown their sorrows because maybe when their brain kind of gets shut off, they can start feeling something. So they use that as their emotional outlet, that, okay, I get blasted this weekend so I can cry a little bit, or I just drink and destroy myself, because they have these strong feelings inside, conscious or unconscious, and they don't know how to make them move, and they end up basically becoming poisonous for themselves. And so understanding that they're there, so shock and denial. And then you have the fact that you recognize that you're having a reaction. And that reaction is to own it. And what is normal? Now, this is a very interesting conversation, I believe. Because when you're having a reaction, the reaction, in a way, generally starts before the response, before you respond. The reaction is it hits you and you go, what? Hey, say what? You open the door and you see something and you jump because it looks like a snake and it's a rope. That initial reaction, that happens emotionally as well. And that can come in all kinds of different shapes and forms. And my friends, if you're experiencing grief at this moment, or you're not in a situation like this, it's normal. First of all, you have to understand that what you're doing is normal. Not feeling it for one of our friends was normal at this moment. Feeling it very intensely for another friend was very, very normal. Whatever you're doing, crying, not crying, being angry, not that you have to let that out on your friends, but the fact that you're having the reaction is okay. Shaming yourself or blaming yourself or diminishing yourself or making yourself, great because you're having a certain reaction. The typical is, I'm a man. I didn't cry.
Had one of the men
I
in
was
the
tough.
had one of the men in the memorial, and he was just watering up all the time. He said, "I can't stop it." I said, "Don't stop it.
Yeah, why would you?
Why would you?
Yeah.
Just let it. This is the place for it.
Yeah.
Because if you're not doing it here, it's gonna come later, and it's just a lot more work. This is the place and time for it. Just let it be.
So
just
get it going.
let that work. It's fine. It's a safe space, kind of. So
exactly. And then you have the other side of that, which is also the other side of the interesting conversation, because it could be that your tears are not connected to sorrow for you because of the way you were built neurologically as a child, that not crying is also okay. It doesn't mean that you're not feeling your grief. And that's another thing, because we have the I never cry, and then we have the I must cry crew. It's like a scale. And tears are not necessarily obligatory, because the question is, how many tears are enough? Is it 2 tears? Is it 1,000 tears? Is it 1,000 years of tears? Is it tearing up a little bit and then pulling it back, and tearing up a little bit and pulling it back? And the reason why I bring this up is that it's a scale, and the scale is normal. Some people have a tear reaction, some people don't. And that's a very important thing, because, real men don't cry. Well, yes, some real men do cry a lot. Well, women always cry. No, some women don't cry. So you're not obligated one thing or the other. That's not the way that works. Just like not everybody laughs at my jokes. Right? I do. But Marit never laughs at my jokes. Right? Because they're just not funny. Exactly. You see, some people think they're funny, some people don't. So how much laughter? Is it a hee-hee, or is it rolling on the floor? What's appropriate? I don't know. It's very difficult to tell when you're as funny as I am.
No, you're not funny.
Yeah, you see.
No. You should never become a stand-up comedian. However, could be.
You're super funny, right? Yeah. So the whole point is that how much is enough? And that whatever is going on inside you, whatever needs to be moved and expressed, is enough, and it's normal, and it's okay. So if you're a young person and learning to grieve, or you're an old person and never have really worked and looked at your grief and just kind of have put it inside and kept moving on like a trooper, then understand that energy is emotion, or emotions are energy in motion, and energy will move. Energy is polar. So you must start to work with it. And that's when your reaction becomes a response. And how fast these things are, that's up to you. That's up to your consciousness, your ability to be aware, your ability to work. Marit was super fast now. Before, she used to have a different reaction pattern and a different response pattern. Now she's a super advanced human being, and she works things quickly, and she's able to be centered and help the whole group in their grieving process. So first of all, there's shock and denial. And then after shock and denial, there's the reaction. And then it's the slow process of turning that reaction. And when I say slow, I don't mean it has to take a certain time, but it's about transitioning consciously. And when you're very conscious, it seems like time passes slowly often. And when you're very conscious with that reaction to response process, then you start to receive power and joy from it. So, when you've lost something, like a friend, or your mom or dad, or your grandmother or grandfather, or your cat or your dog, what you've lost actually is that connection. So how do you connect with something that's gone? How do you feel the hole in the heart? How do you fill it? And that's what Mara was talking about. You find a thing or a quality. Start with a quality that you loved about that person. And maybe not the shoes, or, I mean, of course you could wear the same shoes as they did or whatever to
I don't think
memorialize
that's
them.
going to help that much.
No. But my friend, our friend, my student that passed, one of the great things that I saw in him was he was unapologetically him. He lived him. He did him. And not in a way that made enemies, but he was so authentically him. And I love that quality about him so much that any time that I work with myself, I have him with me, because that authenticity that he had is something that I want to, in a way, memorialize inside myself, which connects me to him. So that's the process of reconnecting myself with him. And you've done that already, in that, you can hear his voice, and you have that joy and that fun that he had. Not that you're idealizing him or putting him on a pedestal, but you're taking
It's
with
the
you.
quality that I saw he contributed with, and that brought a lot to other people and to himself. And I'm like, I could bring that with me.
Yeah, exactly.
That would be very nice. And then again, I can hear his voice in my head all the time, and he's laughing his ass off. And it's just, sometimes you go, you need to be quiet. A little bit much. But to find out those qualities, and I wish I had known this when my grandma died, because it's so many years ago now. So I thought my grandma, she was like the biggest, most important person for me. And I thought that I would be on her grave every day or every week, and I am never there.
Yeah.
And I don't need to.
No.
I don't need. First of all, I don't do anything that people think that I need to do anymore. I've stopped that a long time ago, and I do what feels right for me, and then I know it's right. I'm not playing games.
You're not playing Marit. You are Marit.
Yeah, and I'm doing what's needed and what's the correct thing for me. And in our process of building what actually has to be built, and like I said, my grandma's dead, so, and her bones be in the ground, I hope. And if I really hope.
Oh, that went sideways.
I
Okay,
really
hold on. Yeah.
but it's she's with me, so why do I need to go there?
Yeah.
And to
it.
put flowers, because other people need to see that I put flowers. I don't need to. She's with me.
That's it.
And I wished I had known that before, that I could have I kind of had to go back and rediscover her and find qualities, and it was much harder than if I had known that when she died, because then I could have brought her with me straight away.
Yeah.
And remember her that way. So for me, that works really well, and I think that's like I said, also it's what we mentioned a couple of times now. It's important not to put people on a pedestal, because you have memorials and memorials and burials, and you always say the good stuff. Don't become them,
Yeah.
because you're still
Not
you.
needed.
But like you said, he was our friend. He was unapologetic. Doesn't mean you're gonna be unapologetically him, but you're
No.
gonna be unapologetically Jason.
Yes. Or Marit or Rutger.
Yeah.
Or
So you kind of are
Yeah.
but the quality that they have,
That's right.
to find that and bring that with you, and then you never lose them.
That's it. And that's really the beginning of working from reaction to response, and working that loss and reconnecting, because it's about connection. What's the first thing that a baby needs and wants after they're born? It's
Air.
air. That's right. It's air. The next thing is connection, reconnecting with the mother, because they've lost connection and they need reconnection. So we spend our whole life breathing, as Marit's underlined, and then reconnecting emotionally with our environment, becoming one, as Aristotle said. Once you've understood yourself and developed yourself, truly developed your talents and who you are, it's about your connection with society that gives the greatest happiness, because you are one with society. You're one with the world. You're one with the inside of you. You're one with the outside of you. And that's enlightenment. That is the greatest happiness. So loss, in a way, this kind of loss, death, separates you in a way. And it's about psycho-emotionally reconnecting with that person and the qualities of that person, what they gave you. So now that was a little hint to the next stage. So we had first shock, right? We had denial. We had reaction. Then we respond. And then after we've started to respond and we find those qualities that we loved about that person, and we start looking for them in ourselves, we're reconnecting that person through those qualities. The next one is to start seeing those qualities, or seeing that person or the things that you loved about that person in the people around you. So I always talk about this. And we had somebody who came to us yesterday and wanted to share in the grief and in the process of moving through the grief. And I use the same example because we were walking to training, and I've lost my mother, my biological mother and father, and all of my grandparents. And so I know loss. I've lost many friends because I have a little bit of gray in my beard. And probably the biggest loss for me in this whole process was, of course, my mother, because she's that one point of unconditional love in the world that without a shadow of a doubt, through thick and thin, is going to love you no matter what. May not always approve, not always, you may get yelled at, you may get spanked, you get all these things, because unconditional love contains all emotion, but you know that you're connected to love in a very powerful way. And when that disappears, it's quite a shock. And this whole process of grieving, it's interesting because that was kind of talk about reconnecting with connection. And in that process of reconnecting with society is that I started seeing my mother in different people, not just the qualities of her, not just the fact that I had a personal relationship and something inside me that I really appreciated her, that I found in myself, but I started seeing so many of her qualities, for example, in Marit, her strength and her ability to be organized and take responsibility, her ability to see people, her ability to care and be strong for people when she needed to be, loyalty, all of these amazing qualities that my mom had, her ability to be a unstoppable worker. There's so many of those things that I see every single day in Marit, and I appreciate her so much. It's not that I'm projecting my mommy trauma on her, but I'm seeing those beautiful things that she shared with my mother. So then my mother is always with me because my bestie's here, right? and I see those qualities. So I have, in a way, it's not a projection on her, but it's an appreciation of her. And that's the important thing. When you get to the point where you then start appreciating people around you more because that person was in your life, then they're there all the time. And that's the last phase. That's the reintegration, reconnection phase of this grief process. And that's, again, finding that in the outside world, your inside world. So you start with the inside world with finding that unapologetically me inside me, but then starting as one quality. He had many qualities that I appreciate, but then finding that quality on the outside and seeing him with us all the time. You hear him in your head, and you're going to see people do things that he used to do. And you're going to, you start in a way being reminded of that wonderful connection, because that's what we want. We want connection. So I think that that's probably the most powerful way to handle not just grief, but any situation where you're feeling separate. And it's one of those psychological mechanisms that are present because you have a nervous system, like we say in the integrated human at our events, that you have these things because you have a nervous system, because you are human, not because of some special belief system, not because of some special, psychedelic thing you just took or whatever. It's because you are human and have a nervous system. If you're not a human, at least you have a nervous system. So, remember, you matter. Unless you multiply yourself by the speed of light squared, then you're energy. But if you can't be energy, matter.
Thank you for listening to our podcast. We hope you felt we added something to your day and hopefully your life. If you want to learn more, subscribe to our newsletter and find us at integrated-human.com. That is integrated-human.com. Integrated Human on YouTube and other social media platforms. Have a great day and thank you again for listening. Love, light, and upgrade from us at the Integrated Human team.